This is Chum, one of the islands of the Franz Josef Land archipelago. The rocky, uncomfortable island of the Russian polar regions attracts hundreds of tourists from all over the world, and travelers come here not for the Arctic scenery, but because of an amazing phenomenon. Yucin Island is full of perfectly shaped stone spheres. The size of the spheres is different, from a ping-pong ball to huge blocks of meter diameter. Where did these stone spheres appear on an uninhabited Arctic island? And what was discovered inside them? Unusual stone spheres are scattered all along the coast of Champ Island. Tourists call these boulders swords of the gods, or cannonballs of giants. The largest spherolites are up to 2 meters in diameter, and the smallest are only a few centimeters. But where on a distant Arctic island came perfectly flat round stones? The spherolites on Champ Island are a mystery to scientists. For many years, in scientific circles there are disputes about the origin of the mysterious Volans. Some researchers believe that the stone balls were created by humans. According to one version, several thousand years ago, the modern archipelago of Franz Josef Land was one large piece of land, which was inhabited by ancient tribes. They allegedly possessed a unique technology of stone processing, the spherulites they created. The candidate of historical sciences Hilda King has put forward the assumption that these balls could be used for moving heavy cargoes. Egyptians once used similar stone balls to move sarcophagi, but only on the island of Chumph have not yet found any traces of ancient people. That's why most scientists are inclined to believe that the mysterious spherulites, a work of nature, stone balls, could have been formed by a volcanic eruption. Volcanism, interacting with the surface of the world ocean, led to well-known processes, which can be observed ourselves. If we throw, say, red-hot drops into the water, if we throw, say, red-hot drops of candle wax into water, we see approximately the same process. When a drop quickly solidifying does not spread out, especially if it is in cold water, but turns into such a natural construction. But recently the volcanic version of the origin of spherulites had to be abandoned because a few years ago, scientists decided to crack one of the stone balls. What they saw shocked them. Inside the stone were teeth of ancient sharks. How they got there, according to polar researchers found fangs of underwater predators, proved that mysterious boulders formed at the bottom of the ocean, and the core of the spherulite were mollusk shells in principle for any process. Even for the formation of a raindrop needs a sol, yes. That is, a certain element that will condense in this case. This is such an analog of the formation of a pearl around a grain of sand or shell fragment. Due to the influx of tourists, the number of stone spherulites on Champ Island has noticeably decreased. On several occasions, travelers have taken small spherulites for keepsakes. Even large boulders weighing several hundred kilograms were taken away. Now it is strictly forbidden to take the stones off the island. Not only the island of Champ with mysterious boulders is of interest to tourists from all over the world. Many travelers are eager to get to the Cronogi, so-called artificial floating islands in Ireland and Scotland. Cronogi are built from mounds of earth of stones and wood. In terms of area, they do not exceed 30 square meters. Scientists claim that some islands are older than Stonehenge. These artificial pieces of land were created by the ancestors of the Scots. In the Neolithic era, were inhabited by those tribes that came seafarers on the trade route between the coast of the Baltic Gulf modern to Spain and France. So their ancestors settled here to make it convenient for trade, in what is now Scotland. Why the ancestors of the Scots built artificial islands is unknown. Cronogi were unsuitable for permanent habitation, as they could not withstand the weight of a large number of people. Therefore, some researchers believe that the floating islands were used only for pagan rituals. Archaeologists have found ritual utensils with traces of fire and the remains of charred food on several Cronogi, with the remains of charred food. But there is another version. A number of scientists suggest that the artificial islands served as a kind of fortifications. They not only protected the approaches to the coast, but were also used as a place for signaling. Strategically, a very good object, but not to be taken by surprise. This was a kind of alarm point. What's now called the first warning point, because that's where the Normans were doing their best. Sailed the North Sea, sailed out into the Atlantic. The most unusual hypothesis about the origin of the Cronogs was put forward by the German archaeologist Heinrich Pusch. He believes that the floating islands were part of a huge tunnel that was supposed to connect Scotland with Turkey. But there is no evidence for this version. The purpose of the Cronogs is still a mystery. This footage shows another mysterious island, Pavella. It is located in the Venetian lagoon. Local residents, including sailors, try not to approach this piece of land and call it the Island of Ashes. According to historians, at different times about 160,000 people died on Poveglia. Then there were often plague epidemics, and there is a legend that these plague inhabitants were sent to Poveglia from Venice, and of course, no one fed them or cared for them. They were just left there to die. The bodies of the dead were dumped in mass graves or burned. Even healthy people were sent to the island and killed at the slightest sign of illness. It is said that human bones can still be found on Poveglia, but even when the bubonic plague epidemic went down, people continued to die on the small Italian island. They died within the walls of a psychiatric hospital. The hospital was founded there at the beginning of the fascist regime, that is, in the 1920s. It was some secret decision of Mussolini. We know that the Italian authorities on the one hand did not organize concentration camps, some kind of extermination camps, but on the other hand tried to keep their enemies in isolation, usually on such islands. In a psychiatric hospital on the island of Poveglia, patients were treated with lobotomy. The doctor made a hole in the patient's head, through which he separated the frontal lobe of the brain from the rest of the brain with a special loop. The operation took place without anesthesia and in conditions of complete unsanitation. And indeed, these patients became calm, docile. When scientists began to evaluate these patients over a longer period of time, it turned out that there are a lot more effects. That is, these patients become donative, intellectual activity decreases, the decision-making process is impaired. The decision-making process. Well, in general, a person ceases, in fact, to be a person. In the middle of the 20th century, Pavels performed about 1,000 such operations. How many patients survived is unknown. The psychiatric clinic was closed in 1968. For a long time, the island of Praha was closed to the public. But recently, an Italian businessman said that he was going to build a hotel on Poveglia. Venetians are sure that no one will be able to stay long in this hotel, because, according to legend, the island is guarded by the ghosts of all the people who died here.